A hell of a job in your job.
Politics has gotten just so out of whack, but it's going to come back and whack. Get your words straight, Jack.
Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Cedar.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It's Thursday, February 6th, 2020. I'm Michael Brooks. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We're broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On today's program, the great Connor Kilpatrick, contributing editor, writer for Jacobin, on his new piece, Why Pete was the type of kid who would unplug the Sega if he was losing. We'll talk about the state of the Democratic primary, what all of the infinite numbers of problems with Pete Buttigieg there are with Connor Kilpatrick. New Hampshire tracking poll shows Sanders holding a lead, but Buttigieg closing in, probably mostly Biden voters flipping to Buttigieg, but tightening race. Bernie Sanders raised $25 million in January with his usual juggernaut of small donors powering the way. Significant and massive, many errors in the Iowa caucuses from the results released on Wednesday. It seems very clear that if we were judging it by the metric that all sensible people should be judging voting, who won the most votes? Bernie Sanders won Iowa, and it also looks increasingly likely that the satellite caucuses will come through, giving him a delegate win as well. But well done, aces on the DNC brand. I wonder how well Donald Trump and Republican state parties across the country will do with the concept of quality control vote counts. Really, really good door opening, guys.
Ooh, I like the sound of those.
And they came up with this thing called quality control. It's fascinating. Shadow's CEO is very sorry for Iowa, but sorry to say, she will still not disclose the company's funders. And the votes are in. Democrats holding steady on the impeachment. Mitt Romney crossing the line on one article. Bloomberg. Hello, this is Mitt Romney. Bloomberg surrogates have seats on the DNC Rules Committee. And another powerful example of confidence building from the Democratic National Committee. White House threatens to veto Puerto Rico earthquake aid package ahead of House vote. Justice Department opens civil rights investigation into Missouri prisons and Mississippi prisons. They probably should in Missouri as well. Hundreds departed from El Salvador have been killed or abused upon their return, according to a new report from Human Rights Watch. And the Department of Homeland Security has blocked New Yorkers from enrolling in a trusted travel program, Global Entry, because of New York's opposition because of New York being a sanctuary city. And apparently, is this really true? No more broker's fees for New York renters?
Yep.
That's a win. I really want to see how that's written.
That's a change from my experience of moving here too.
My friend, it's a very good. My friend.
That's inaccurate.
Oh, I'm just trying to get myself some new digs. Is there a way I could do it without the fee?
This isn't a bait and switch.
This isn't bait and switches. See, I come from Dakota. My friend, this is the nicest apartment you are going to see outside of the Trump Tower, which you are not ready. You'll be ready for in a couple of years. That's a good bit. Israeli scam artist broker tries to hustle Matt after he arrives in New York. So, you fellas ever come across Jerry Seinfeld in your brokerage work? Yes, he's a good friend, and for one, you add 3,000 to the brokerage fee, we could meet him. Oh God! So we're at 94%, I believe,
96.
right? 96%. I think at this point, we could definitively say that again. Bernie Sanders won the most votes in Iowa.
He won the most votes in the first round and the second round. The SDE, what does that mean?
State delegate
elect
something. It's the another third.
It's the third
sort of metric
that basically awards delegates.
Yeah, that's very easily fudgeable and roundable apparently. But Sanders is down by 3 of those, 547 to 550. I guess what matters, quote unquote, is the delegates, and they're tied at 11. So in terms of most metrics, Bernie is the winner.
Yeah.
State delegate equivalent.
State delegate equivalent.
Oh yes, that's from ancient Greece.
Yeah, that's the birthplace of democracy. Well, maybe actually it might have been. that something like that probably would fit with the ancient Greek definition of democracy.
I like to think
more so than one person, one vote.
I like to think they didn't have vendors making things more complicated than it has to.
That'd be amazing if you were reading some like Plato Socrates symposium and then you realize you're like, this guy's trying to sell a new tablet system.
This guy's got a new organization called Pegasus.
Yeah,
These new tablets
it's called
that
Pegasus
are unreliable.
LLC, and apparently they're tablets that don't actually register what you scratched on them.
Yeah, they're really hard to chisel into.
Yeah. They're totally unchiselable, but they actually got rewarded a fat contract from the wine merchants in town that have a pretty strong bias towards one of the candidates. I'll just leave it at, I have no doubt that, there's incompetence, there's institutional bias. I think
opportunism.
There's opportunism, maybe. If Pete Buttigieg won the most votes and pulled off a shocking victory, I do not think that this process would go this way. I'll leave it at that. Now, on the other hand, don't fall into, complete
we still won.
That's my thing. Is I absolutely think some BS is being pulled here, and Bernie won. And I will say, look, in 2016 and 17, it was very important for people to really hammer home that Hillary Clinton won more votes than Donald Trump, that a bigot fear campaign was not the majority of the United States. That talking point, particularly in 2018, started to become a big problem because it started to get deployed against any reform in the Democratic Party, any strategy to reach out to new voters, and really just progressive politics and any type of left politics, right? So that became a very problematic formulation for people who just wanted to guard their own self-interest and not have any change and to undermine Sanders. That being said, this shouldn't be a controversial point here that, of course, we should have electoral systems nationally and in states and everywhere imaginable where who wins the most votes wins. And that's certainly become a Democratic Party talking point. There's a clip floating around of Pete Buttigieg saying just that a couple months ago. So Bernie Sanders won. He won Iowa. And it looks like he will actually probably come out in a delegate count as well. And all this has done is just muddle the media narrative for a couple of days. This is where are we at? We're at 3 first or 2? Okay. So Crystal Ball has called this Crystal Ball has consulted her crystal ball and given her a very accurate analysis. This is Crystal Ball this is from yesterday, saying that we don't know the state delegate equivalent count yet, and we're all and I thought Dems were all about the popular vote anyway.
For you, the story is still the process, yes?
I mean, there are a number of stories here, but the process is horrendous. I mean, how can you feel good about a situation where party elites decide to selectively release partial results that disproportionately benefit one candidate? Paul's absolutely right. If Pete ends up being the winner of the state delegates, he's been completely robbed by this. But let's not miss the fact that we don't actually know if that is the case. And Bernie Sanders very much leads in the popular vote here as well. So I think it's been interesting, too, the media narrative that has come out of this. I heard you talking earlier about how Bernie didn't meet expectations. He literally won the most votes. At least that's what it looks like right now. I'm not sure what other metric you were supposed to judge by. I mean, this is a guy who's been dismissed throughout this entire campaign, asked by the media when he's going to drop out, caricatured as angry and divisive, and he has a low ceiling and he can't possibly win. He actually got the most votes in the state after Democrats have been running around for 4 years talking about how the popular vote is supposed to be what matters.
Indeed, co-signing all of those sentiments. And guess what? This was yesterday. Now we're at this morning. It looks like the ball has been working very effectively.
Crystal ball, the moment you've been waiting for. You were right. You were way right. You were wicked right yesterday when you sat here on TV and said, look, we need to wait till all the results are in. You said you thought that Bernie Sanders would make up that gap. He all but has. It's basically tied with 97% of the precincts reporting. Your take on what this means.
Well, I want you to think about this from the perspective of Sanders supporters who do not have a lot of faith in this process or the Democratic Party. To start with, all of this enabled Pete to basically claim a fake victory for days, enabled by the Iowa Democratic Party, the maker of this app, and the media that ran with headlines that were, Pete's in the lead. And the people who are real victims here are who is putting Sanders over the top right now or close to the top right now. It's the immigrant workers and the Latino working class people that campaign painstakingly organized, and their voices were erased from this for days, which in my mind is downright criminal. So Pete is not a victim here. Pete got 3 days of saying he was the winner. There's a new tracking poll out that has him up 9 points in New Hampshire. So all of this completely goes to show you that Sanders supporters are going to be absolutely mistrustful of this process, and rightfully so. Why were these votes released in this way? Why were there, even after they came out, so many errors? How can anyone even have confidence that the numbers are right at this point? It's absolutely outrageous. And the fact that those immigrant workers had their voices robbed for so long is so wrong to me.
Well, she's 110% right. It's a relaxing clip when all I can do is completely co-sign. But again, for people who support Bernie, he won. It was always going to tighten up in New Hampshire. In the long run, if Pete is the main competition, that's great. This is a guy who's got a huge amount of problems, and whose main substantive record as the mayor of a college town is serious institutional racism problems in a police force. And then even some questions with regards to his own relationship to it and donors that there's a lot of secrecy around, but need to be reported. This is somebody who has engaged in a ruthless and racialized campaign of gentrification. And this is somebody who obviously would lose to Donald Trump. So people need to, again, Bernie just had another amazing fundraising month. Knock on doors, make calls. And I would earnestly say that if you support another candidate, I'm not, look, I think what I think of different candidates is pretty transparent, and that's my job, to be honest about what I think. I think there's folks who support a candidate like Warren who, might have more center-left politics or have been persuaded by various things. But I would just say, and certainly this would apply in my view to Gabbard or Yang folks, if you have at some point some commitment to some type of either progressive policy priorities or you are really concerned about institutional change in the Democratic Party and in this country, for that matter, there's one game in town left, and everything will be institutionally against that candidate. Now, again, transparently, I've been saying that for over a year. There always was only one game in town in terms of that, in my opinion. But now we're at a point where the numbers are coming in, and, this is what it is. So if that's your concern, it's time. And by the way, I have no doubt for a split second. I mean, some folks that supported Warren were saying this precise argument several months ago, just based off of polls. So I'm saying this based off of what's actually happening in reality. I like this. We did a little...
I'm a big fan of etymology.
Yes, you are. Go ahead, man.
And etymology is basically the origin of words and the roots of it. So if you look at unity up in the etymological dictionary, it comes from Latin, unus, unitas. It means one. You can't unite around two different candidates. And if
tell that to the New York Times.
Yeah, exactly. Look how much. Look what effect that has had. Yeah. A lot of potency there when you split that up.
Bunch of dopes.
And we'll probably get to more of it in the fun half. But they're numbers that basically Warren siphoned off a lot of Bernie 2016 supporters, as we could kind of expect. And their second choice in the caucus was not Bernie; it was Buttigieg or Klobuchar. So she's basically laundering them into worse voters. It's time for them to work something out. If the people who said that they're in a formation, they're going to work together, and it's time.
Right. I mean, it's beyond time. See it. I never bought that, and I don't I think if Warren drops out, I don't expect that she'll be endorsing one way or another.
And if it doesn't happen, it's not going to be because we were rude on Twitter. It's because it's going to be because people were right about Warren and that she's a snake.
And they also, and they just understand how politics works. But I mean, my God, don't.
Well, I mean the Warren campaign generally.
Right. But I mean, whatever. I mean, certainly, look, and by the way, if it was because somebody was rude, if you're willing to throw away single payer because someone was rude to you on Twitter, you should go to Guantanamo. How about I escalate the stakes? That was a joke. But I'm just saying, you're a narcissistic idiot if that's the case. But I think for a lot of real people voting and caring about this stuff, I mean, I really the door is open for, a sincere effort that's going to come down to one candidate versus a massive amount of effort against him. Valentine's Day is special, but it's only one day. Luckily, there's something that can help make it date night all throughout the year. I'm talking about Hunt a Killer, an activity that you can experience with your loved one every month. Roll up your sleeves and work together to solve a realistic murder mystery. Hunt a Killer thrusts you and your friends or family into an ongoing murder mystery investigation. The game brings people together by challenging them to decode ciphers, examine clues, and solve puzzles. It's like an escape room delivered right to your door. Hunt a Killer has 2,000 5-star reviews on Trustpilot, and Fast Company named them as one of the most innovative entertainment companies 2019. Plus, part of the proceeds from every box goes to the Cold Case Foundation. I have actually begun playing Hunt a Killer. And all I could say is, as somebody who just, to be honest, not a big board game person, and not, I guess I've read some murder mysteries in my day, but I'm not I don't watch Law and Order. I don't it. This is not a big thing for me. Much more of a mafia versus serial killer guy. So I went in with those hesitations. This is amazing. It's incredibly fun. It's cozy, old-timey fun in a way, which I think, especially if you're below 35 or you're in your 20s and you have zero memory of, pre-smartphone, this will give you a dose of what life was like before you were touching your iPhone all the time. And if you're, above that, this will be a great way of a reminder of the kind of fun you can have that isn't based on technology. Entirely on technology. It's awesome. Right now, just for our listeners, you can go to hunttokiller.com/majority and use promo code majority at checkout for 20% off your first box. Head to hunttokiller.com/majority for 20% off. Show support for our podcast. That's hunttokiller.com/majority. We're going to take a brief break. We'll be right back with Connor Kilpatrick. Welcome back to the Michael Majority Report. Sorry. Welcome back. I'm flummoxed here because we just got some big news that literally our guest now, Connor Kilpatrick, contributing editor at the Jacobin, author of this great new piece. Mayor Pete was the kind of kid who unplugged the Sega if he was losing. Connor, I thought for a second, and this shows how naive I am, you said, did you just hear the big news? Tom Perez, and I honestly, a little part of me was like, resigned because of complete and utter incompetence. And of course, that's not what happened. Tom Perez just released this tweet. Enough is enough. In light of the problems, do we have this up on screen? Enough is enough. In light of the problems that have emerged in the implementation of the delegate selection plan, and in order to assure public confidence in results, I'm calling on the Iowa Democratic Party to immediately begin a recanvass. We're going to need to, hopefully, I know John from San Antonio doesn't really call when I'm hosting, but we're going to need people with a much more kind of technical expertise of what this entails. But Connor, first reaction?
My first reaction is this is absolutely hilarious that this is happening right as we are getting information from the satellite caucuses that not only did Bernie win the popular vote in the first and second round, but he probably very likely won the state delegate equivalent. So basically, he won by every conceivable metric. And just as that's coming out, Tom Perez says, you know what, the whole thing's invalidated. We're going to recanvass. Who the hell knows what that means to recanvass? I'm torn between thinking, on one hand, there is so much shadiness and so much incompetence in equal measures on display that it makes sense to have some kind of audit of the results. At the same time, it is absolutely hilarious. It's coming just hours after we see that Sanders is going to win by every conceivable metric, every little hurdle this party put up. He leaped over it, and now suddenly, oh, you know what? We need to just kind of throw the whole thing into even more chaos.
Well, so that's the thing, right? Like, let's not even look. Whatever. Okay, Tom Perez got fed up. Sure, let's just take it at face value. If you don't want to take it at face value, don't. I want to take. I'll take this one completely at face value. That is like, just for sake of analysis on the fly, you didn't do this 24 hours ago. You didn't do this has already been a disaster. Like, right. I was in DC doing the Hill with and around, some of the people on that set are much more like, I'm the, strategist for 365, strategies, whatever. Like, people who are much more like, I have a sense of somebody who does analysis and has watched this stuff. But honestly, when it was like a couple hours late, I didn't have I was annoyed because I wanted to go to sleep. But it was like, this sucks. I'm anxious about Bernie. I want to go to sleep. But 2-3 hours is not the end of the world. By the time you're already 24 hours into this, and you don't realize that this is already an absolute debacle that looks terrible, and by the way, will be used as precedent by Republicans to do their games. It is stunning. Unless you want to interpret this in the very negative anti-Sanders light, which you're free to do. But let's just go on. Let's just play with incompetence for now. You wait until 48 hours of incoming on this. And then right at the moment, as you say, that it looks like, oh, yeah, you know what? Bernie Sanders just won. OK, now you're going to do this recant. Honestly, it's mind boggling. I don't know. What?
Pattern recognition.
Pattern recognition, indeed.
Yeah, that's the thing to recognize about this. And in some ways, I'm not sure how useful it is to question, is it incompetence or is it, dirty tricks? Right. What is true is that these kinds of things all seem to serve one clear purpose, which is that it promotes the status quo candidate. It's like when, the elections in New York are always a disaster, particularly in the last few years, and they never seem to get fixed. Now, I'm not saying that's it's a conspiracy to make every election in New York a disaster, but I think there's a lot of evidence that shows that when you have these lines around the block or whatever, it benefits the party's preferred candidate, the status quo candidate. So in a way, not fixing it is basically the party, meddling and playing a dirty trick simply by not fixing it. And that's kind of what I think when I look at this.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. And I think that's another, we actually, what's funny is just kind of follow a thought pattern. We all recognize, particularly if we're on any sort of left, that the fact that, as an example, voting isn't a national holiday builds in all of these massive barriers for people who work for a living, who have obligations, who can't just, upend their schedule to go vote. Follow that a little bit to, that my point is that dynamic is going to play out in a lot of different ways. And it doesn't need to be some grand conspiracy or anything like that. In fact, thinking in terms of grand conspiracy is oftentimes diluted and disempowering. But on the other hand, thinking in terms of institutional bias and default setting, you would actually that's on the flip side. You're just being utterly naive and delusional to not see that. And again, part of the proof here is that this isn't, if this was just a screw up, slapstick comedy, which it is in part, then there would be all of a sudden, oh man, it looks like Bernie won by 20 points. Oh no, sorry, Biden's having a surge. Every single screw up breaks against Sanders. And again, I'm not talking like the coin tosses and ridiculous stuff like that. Of course, Sanders won coin tosses, but I'm talking like 5 minutes ago, we're finally about to, it looks really clear Bernie won. All of a sudden, Tom Perez emerges from a faculty room in Brown to say, you know what, recanvass.
And I think what's important to remember is this is serving the Buttigieg campaign and by serving the Buttigieg campaign, you're serving the Democratic Party leadership, right? Because he is a anti-Bernie, non-Bernie candidate. So what has happened is that, let's say that for some reason they got their act together and they counted up the satellite caucuses last night. They finished. Matt Carp woke me up at like midnight to tell me they were, counting these satellite caucuses, and they stopped just before I think satellite caucus 1, which had the meatpacking plant, I believe it was, with the Ethiopian workers
Yes.
that, was on TV all day, the caucus that went completely for Bernie. And they stopped right before they announced we're not counting anymore, right before they count that one. And, I'm not trying to be conspiratorial, but I was like, wait, you start up again and then you stop right as you're about to finish. It just gets a little, it's a little funny, but I think what you said is important.
Yes.
It's like, look which way this always breaks, right? I think that's something to keep in mind. And let's also remember, this is a small state. Iowa's 31st in ranked by population in the country. It's comparable to the population size of Brooklyn. There's really no excuse for this. What's ended up happening last night? Let's say that they finished the count last night. Then you would have headlines this morning that would likely have said Bernie Sanders emerges victorious in Iowa caucus, right? So that would have been the headline in every major newspaper, the New York Times and everything. Instead, it's, you know what, more funny business. That just benefits Pete Buttigieg, who now has an 8-point bump going into New Hampshire. So
no, I agree. And what's hilarious, though, is that it's like, and again, I really look at this just in terms of utter institutional rot. But just like the New York Times, and there was a multitude of factors going on there, but they couldn't even just go, you know what, at the end of the day, we're a corporatist newspaper. We feel but we also want to kind of signify that we're socially progressive, so we're going to go for Klobuchar. There was enough pull of like, no, we need to actually try to show that we're committed to reform. But then the people on the reform side clearly, again, because they're so right wing that even Warren's liberal program was too much for them. So what do? They come out and they do this utterly embarrassing double endorsement, right? And now you've got. Look, yes, right now, and people do need to bear in mind and double up the efforts. All of this bullshit from the party is helping Buttigieg. And, look, I'm sorry, conclude from that what you may. But in the process, I mean, they are gutting their institutional credibility that was already, I mean, the Democratic Party brand was already like Coke Zero.
Right. But, this is really, I think, keep this in mind. This is really short-term thinking on their part. If Bernie emerges victorious from this process, the entire process, and I actually think there's a very good chance that happens, it's going to be because they just simply couldn't get their act together. And I'm talking about, everyone from the Democratic Party to the New York Times editorial board, the entire liberal donor class. They couldn't get their act together to simply coalesce around a single stop Bernie candidate. They keep switching and moving it around. And that's just I honestly think we might look back and see that it was a gift to Sanders, right?
Yeah.
Like, Warren looks like she's going to be able to do it. Oh, you know what? They get wishy-washy on her and they move to Biden, they move to Klobuchar. I think that process is going to kind of guarantee that Bernie has a strong plurality in these states. Now they're talking about Bloomberg. So, in a weird way, we shouldn't give them too much credit. I think they're kind of been revealed as completely incompetent people.
They are. I mean, I would find it to be a really interesting sort of study in decline. And there's a lot of other variables here. I mean, in the 1990s was tailor-made for the success of third way politics, and the political center of gravity was way to the right, and there was all these other factors that are important. However, how you go, and again, please understand, I'm setting aside all morality and ideology, how you go from Bill Clinton, Tony Blair, James Carville, and through Barack Obama, representing a huge amount of, at least for your personal campaigns, competency and savvy for winning in narrow terms, to Robbie Mook and Tom Perez and and these jokers who make these apps. That would be an incredible study in decline of even just the meritocratic class, even in its own terms. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, imagine if Hillary or, any of these anti-Bernie people now had someone with, I think David Pluff's like advising some people,
right?
But I don't believe he's working for anyone. And that guy, I don't like his politics, but he's clearly very good at what he does. I think
Right.
what the lesson here with Sanders is that coherence can always, emerge over incoherence, right? It's like, a steel blade through like a tidal wave or something. And I think that's kind of what Sanders is able to do that they just simply can't do. It's just total coherence, where the rest of them are just kind of trying to stitch together, wokeness with a hard center-right, economic agenda. And it's so obviously flailing around. And Sanders has none of that. And I think that that's kind of the story here.
Let's talk a little bit about your piece. Why is Mayor Pete the type of kid who'd unplug the Sega if he was losing? And why would he have a Sega to begin with?
I don't know. I like that, the Sega.
Yeah, it's funny. Sega.
I got to give credit to, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. That's comedian Ian Fidens, who came up with that, and I quote him in the piece. But I just thought it perfectly demonstrated the kind of kid Buttigieg is. And I'm allowed to say that because Buttigieg is almost exactly my age. So I feel like I know this dude.
But talk about, there's no doubt that he really, I think there's some very substantive reasons that I'd like to get to here. Take the McKinsey thing, take the connections that are deep. Insofar as Mark Zuckerberg is capable of human friendship, he's friends with Pete Buttigieg. Or Pete Buttigieg being capable of friendship too, for that matter. And he does. Look, there's all the CIA jokes and memes or whatever, which trigger people, blah, blah, blah. Who cares? Whatever. Get over it. The bottom line is he does have a background in, he was in naval intelligence. He did work at McKinsey, and he is maybe the closest candidate of anyone to Silicon Valley. And that includes a field that at one point included a very prominent senator from California. But I don't think Harris is as deeply networked with Silicon Valley as Buttigieg is, down to like we were in dorm rooms in Harvard during the Bush era, basically cooking up how we were going to make America even worse in 15 years, if that was even possible in the Bush era, right? So right. I think that, I think it's actually, in addition to all of the just huge kind of, personal sort of hollowness and unlikability about him, I think that this nexus around connections to Silicon Valley, and the military, frankly, and the fact that people should recognize how close those worlds really are of Silicon Valley and military contracting and surveillance systems. That's partially why I find him to be sort of a uniquely disturbing proposition. And then on the other hand, I'll just throw this in the mix too. If we think outside of terms of just simply like obsession with where people went to school and how they tested, this is a person who hasn't accomplished anything in life. A lot of these other candidates could point to, I was the first African-American woman senator from California. Okay, yep, that's something. I was the first. Like, these are real things. Now, honestly, at this point, the biggest thing I will say is, look, he's an openly gay man who's running a serious presidential campaign. That is absolutely significant. But insofar as we go before that, loses statewide races, is a divisive and harmful mayor to the working class. And then besides that, has a bunch of check boxes, but hasn't contributed anything.
You really hit the nail on the head with, I think the best way to describe what's so creepy about him and all these connections, like, we don't even need to go down the path of like verifying, he was in the CIA or anything. What it is he is clearly a project. Now, the question is he just his own project, or is he, the project of, the donors that effusively love him? Like you said, he's a mayor in a college town who's my age. It all really seems very strange. He reminds me a lot of, he's like the political equivalent of Elizabeth Holmes from Theranos.
Yes.
The same like dead-eyed look with the creepy grin, and the same like impression that he like wakes up in the morning, looks at himself in the mirror and like compares, him to I guess she would compare herself to like Steve Jobs with her turtleneck and everything. He's maybe like copying Bill Clinton or Barack Obama or something. But you get that same creepy, overly like fussied kind of, focus grouped talk and the way he holds himself. There's that article that came out on Slate that couldn't 100% say with certainty, but that really made a strong case that Pete Buttigieg not only created his Wikipedia page, but has been extremely active in contributing to it, editing it, keeping negative comments away. I'm not talking about Pete Buttigieg's people, but literally Pete Buttigieg. Right. So it should make people nervous. We really should be creeped out by how much support. They can't even find a senator that they want to pour all their hopes and dreams and resources into. A mayor from a college town. It stinks. It's really suspicious.
Yeah, and let's just talk about this again on the institutional rot level. And I've been making this point a lot, but I think it's really important that as much as it was used to evade the massive failure of the Clinton campaign, it was actually an extremely important and basic democratic point to say, you know what, she won more votes than Donald Trump. And incidentally, we need to get rid of the Electoral College. We need to have a one person, one vote system. And in fact, obviously, right? And just putting it in a bigger context, like on my show last night, I did a cold open with Al Gore conceding to George W. Bush. We have had, and I'm quoting from you now, and this is just among many signs of rot. In the last 2 decades, we've had 2 American presidents who lost the popular vote, the first of whom was seated in the White House thanks to the Supreme Court, and the latter of whom lost by nearly 1 million votes. In the last couple of minutes, I mean, honestly, I just think people really need to let that sink. And that doesn't even deal with torture, Iraq, Afghanistan, Lehman Brothers. That's just in our electoral system.
Right, and our recent history. I mean, this is not. This is a short stretch of time. The rot is really, deepening very quickly and spreading very quickly. There's some movement. I don't know if you know about the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, to basically a way to kind of nullify the Electoral College. But what would we say about another country that was the right-wing party that kept losing the popular vote, kept making it to the White House? I think we know what we would say about it.
Well, I think I know what Pete would say about it, which is that they're a great strategic partner.
Yeah, true. I mean, it's kind of creepy to basically look at your own country and realize oh man, am I in a Costa Gavras movie? Is this is this really happening? But yeah, there's enough there to really make the left to scare the hell out of us, I should say.
Yeah. Well, Connor Kilpatrick, the piece is Mayor Pete was the kind of kid who unplugged the Sega if he was losing. Please read it. Please read all of Connor's essays. Jacobin and Connor, including, by the way, your profile of Adam McKay was fascinating. Yeah, Connor Kilpatrick, really appreciate your time as always. And everybody, come on, onward. I mean, at the same day that this is all happening, Bernie Sanders just raised $25 million. We're doing this. Keep pushing. Connor?
Yeah.
Anyways, well, I was expecting a hearty cosign from you, but at any rate.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. I thought you were doing your thing.
No, that was for you. Anyways, Connor, it's awesome. I really appreciate your time, man.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, man. Bye.
Bye.
All right, folks. Got to get to the fun half. Going to be a bit of an abbreviated show today. So I'll just say that up top. What else? Is there anything new from the in the DNC sphere of nonsense?
Well, just to clarify what recanvas means,
Yes.
apparently, this is Zach Montalaro. He's a campaign reporter and score author at Politico, whatever that means. Says, I'm sure he's good. Sounds like a final call will be further delayed in Iowa. For those of you who don't know, a recanvas is a double checking of existing records, not redoing the vote. Comes after the New York Times Upshot report of inconsistencies this AM.
This is unbelievable.
Tom Perez needs to resign. I mean,
Tom Perez needs to resign.
What's annoying, like, there's no accountability ever with this stuff, right? Like, and it's so frustrating because, like, I don't know. We know. Let's get.
No, go ahead.
Fun. I mean, look, I think it's fine to be concerned about foreign influence in elections, but like we've been saying this entire time, how about we do paper ballots? Let's control what we can control. And the very first hurdle, we just run straight into it.
I know. It's just, and again, it's just also so embarrassing from the perspective of like, of all of these years of melodrama and even the frame, you know, of course, you don't want foreign interference. You also don't want corporate interference. You don't want domestic, and we have known that there's systemic problems in our voting systems. And so instead of just cleaning them up, we either don't clean them up or we create different dumb apps to create new problems.
Yeah, it's not even the interference. It's that we've privatized the basic functions of holding a vote.
Right. And that's, by the way, again, even if you want to like not go anywhere skeptical about the Democratic Party and how things are playing out, that should concern anybody. All right, folks. Matt, talk about it.
Yeah, Literary Hangover. I'm going to record with Alex tonight an episode on Ebenezer Cook's poem, 1731, I think it is, Nathaniel Bacon's Rebellion, which is kind of interesting because it after 1776, we looked at, American colonists looked at Nathaniel Bacon as sort of like a precursor for a founding father, like he's willing to stand up to the Brits. But actually, before the revolution, we had a better understanding of him as sort of a genocidal anti-Indian maniac that nonetheless was able to exploit economic strife of the indentured servants and slave classes to, rampage around and kill a lot of Native Americans. So get into Bacon's Rebellion in the next few months of Literary Hangover. So look forward to that this weekend.
Fascinating. Check it out. Michael Brooks show last night was great. Really enjoyed the broader conversation on technology with Corey Pine. This Sunday, Paul O'Connell, who's a labor activist in the UK, brings us up to speed on the labor leadership contest, the kind of global implications of that, reconfiguring the left. Really become a patron, patreon.com/TMBS, get the whole thing. Check out tmbs.fm for tour dates, as well as information on my upcoming book from Zero Books, which is going to be released at the end of February or the first week of March. So you'll be hearing a lot more about that in the coming weeks. We'll see you in the fun half.
Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous, you're a little bit upset, you're riled up.
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
That's some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 eighths. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Ooh.
Rand Paul. I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agreed.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook.
Throw our hands up.
Ooh. Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey, shut up!
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
Maybe Bernie, welcome to the fun half. Maybe Bernie does just need to reassure all of these lunatics. It's like, you don't worry, you can still make overpriced apps that don't work. It's fine. All of the bizarre people that are obsessed. You know what? Maybe those two kids can write a social media report for the DNC. I'm willing to pay people $500,000 for doing nothing if we could pass health care. That's like the big, like the grand bargain inside the Democratic Party is, will you allow us to have a proper primary campaign and fight to give people health insurance? And in exchange, you can keep all of your stupid app companies. Just come to Papa. It's going to be all right. It's going to be all right. You can still clog up wine bars in Georgetown.
You can have more than one birthday party a year if you out of my
exactly.
hair.
Knock yourself out. Wow, so you both met when you were at Harvard together and you had a conversation about an app that would renew democracy. I am willing to pretend that I'm interested in that for 3 minutes. If you will work with me to take lead out of poor people's apartment buildings. Is that a trade that we can work on? I love that. That really is like the perfect distillation. It's just like, if you will join me in running a non-completely effed up and biased Democratic primary, and then to fight so that people don't die on the street because they're homeless and don't have health care, I will agree to promise to listen to your new food delivery for democracy idea. How's about that? Nobody with a stupid idea, failure, or corruption gets blackballed. Which is all of you. Oh my God. Ugh, I hate these people so much.
Actually, what he needs to do is, like sort of the reverse Saddam, which is, you know how Saddam, like the 70s, late 70s?
I do.
So
you're going in a very potent direction here, Matt.
So instead, what he needs to do is give them all jobs in administering Medicare for all, so they get like hooked onto it.
I mean, that's tricky because we don't. I don't.
Okay,
want
actually,
these.
that's
yeah,
true.
I mean, this is actually an important thing. It's got to be something.
You just have to push a button.
Yeah, you got to push a button. That's it. But don't worry, you can write a report about how you engineered the whole thing. It's fine.
We'll get you a plaque for it.
Yeah, we'll get you a plaque. You can drum up business. Ooh, sunshine strategies. That sounds great. Maybe you can defraud some people in the Gulf.
Oh, here's a red carpet luncheon for you guys. Great job.
Amazing job. Could have done single payer without you. Go sell that to some people in Ukraine or something. Thank you so much. If you guys could just please not screw everything up.
Just like
I will pretend that you helped.
A Montessori school for the
Montessori school for
Democratic
Democratic functionaries. What do you think about it? Everybody wins. I think of what you guys did to me in Iowa as a learning experience. An opportunity for growth. I will say, though, Tom, in the last 5 minutes, when it was finally going to become clear that I ran to do the canvas thing, that did actually test my patience a little bit. You're the kind of guy who would not only take the Dodgers out of Brooklyn, you'd send them to some bullshit place like Oklahoma City. Oh, my God. I'm sorry. if our riffing is upsetting. You know,
it's how we process our male anger.
That's how we. I like that though. People should check on that thought process occasionally though. It's just like, I saw a really somebody made a joke about Nancy Pelosi tearing the paper, and so I now support the coup in Venezuela. I no longer think that healthcare is a human right. That is definitely a very healthy and mature approach to politics. I was aware that Tim Kaine and the membrane existed, and also that Hillary Clinton has personally damaged Haiti almost irreparably, and I still managed to advocate voting for her over Donald Trump. So I'd recommend you follow this bro's lead.
I mean, you look at the way the Bernie campaign is being, when they go low, we go high sort of about it. And I think that's the smart, if the rubber really hits the road, we need to fight these people.
Yeah, the rubber really hits the road. We're going to have to go.
For now, I think let us, the parallel Bernie bros, take care of these fights. But
Bernie bros are right now though, Bernie, we're mostly, in terms of actuality, if you're not just obsessed about, Twitter or whatever, or podcast, basically Bernie's Michelle Obama. I'm not trying to damage Tom Perez. I want all of us to come together. Immigrants, meatpack workers, and the failed children of the Democratic Party elite who have crackpot ideas. I want to bring together a country of people struggling to pay the bills, as well as people who have accused me of anti-Semitism, even though members of my family have died in the Holocaust.
We've even reserved a seat for Nira. Right in the back there.
But don't worry, it's still comfortable.
It's comfortable as everyone else.
Unfortunately, we're going to need to monitor some of the communications in case there's an attempt to subcontract the hit on me to the Gulf. People are very upset right now. What's actually really funny is that the only campaign that I can see, and granted I've been following it very closely, but I feel like Buttigieg declared victory without any results in, right? And the only campaign that has actually sent surrogates out on TV to just be like, we don't believe this, is the Biden campaign. Like the only campaign that has done some full on tinfoilism is actually the Joe Biden campaign because of the enormous institutional bias against Joe Biden. All I can think of is Obama saying, Joe, you don't need to do this. Some of the most depressing prophetic words of the entire campaign. All right. Let's get to some sound. This is Brianna Joy Gray, frequent guest on TMBS, Bernie Sanders' national press secretary. I'd say Bree, in this frame, and Bree is a very nice person. That freeze is about as irritated as I think you're going to have Bree look, and for all the reason in the world. This is from last night. This is before the latest absolute nonsense and mishigas from Tom Perez and the DNC. But this is a really important point. Buttigieg declaring this victory is obnoxious. It's certainly wrong if you're going by who got the most votes. The institutional biases are working against Sanders. But even more important, look, and maybe this is also something to be considered when you're having a tantrum about a funny tweet. When he declared victory, he really is quite literally erasing the voices of immigrants and other folks that are at the economic edge who went out to fight for this election. So that is, in fact, for all this terminology that gets thrown around in so many disingenuous and stupid and reductive ways, this is it here. I'm declaring a victory before the votes and civic actions of people have been registered is actually quite obscene. And I actually, again, unfortunately, these terminology has been just so overused and so disingenuous to the point of irrelevance. But that is, in fact, erasure. This is Brianna Joy.
I just want to say this clip includes at the top Buttigieg actually declaring victory, and I seen it again. He is. Well, we'll just play it.
By all indications, we are going on to New Hampshire victorious.
By all indications, no. Like, I can think of a few indications, like the raw vote totals, that you aren't the victor.
By the only vindications that we actually should take seriously, he lost. And he's hinging it on basically a third process, because the second realignment, all polls indicate, every report indicates Sanders won too. So he's basically saying all indications on the technicality, without the full voting of people from all different communities, most disproportionately workers and people of color, I'm making up that I won. And this is what's getting rewarded across media.
And then his like sly, walk back is that I meant victorious in the terms of like for our campaign.
Yeah. Right. That's a small town mayor.
Yeah. Like
through two staffers at the beginning of my campaign.
Sorry, but playing with that ambiguity is, that's classic spy stuff. But.
It is.
By all indications, we are going on to New Hampshire victorious.
How did the Sanders campaign view that statement on Monday night?
Look, I think you have to respect the voters, every single voter that came out and tried to caucus, right? So, for example, we haven't seen any tallies from any of the satellite caucuses. And we know that satellite caucuses are caucuses in which immigrant populations, minority populations, first-time voters are overrepresented. Those are the groups that disproportionately vote for Bernie Sanders. And those are also the groups that really need to feel like there is a lot of faith and confidence in this process. We don't want the people who we've been talking to, who we've been convincing that it matters to come out, right? We've had to have conversations with folks who don't normally see themselves represented and don't normally understand that their vote actually can yield a good result and a material result for their lives. Now they're being told that before their votes are even counted, that someone else is claiming victory, especially in light of the fact that Bernie Sanders still leads in the popular vote and and we don't know what the actual outcome is going to be. It feels a little premature.
Is it disappointing, though, that at this point, it appears anyway, Pete Buttigieg has more state delegate equivalents?
No,
it's not. We won. And the only extent to which this is getting confused is because there has been either manipulation or just mass incompetence, which has produced those effects in a way that favors Pete Buttigieg. That's reality.
It's getting worse, folks. Check out this.
Okay. New. Perez took the step of calling for a recanvass specifically because of issues around how the Iowa Democratic Party was allocating state delegate equivalents from satellite caucus states. Two sources tell CNN. One source said the DNC wanted to go ahead of candidate recount calls. What does that sound like to you? That sounds like to me like they wanted to rush ahead and sign off on Buttigieg with a delegate lead before they counted the places that Bernie has been winning and all indications he will win.
It's crooked.
Guys, I'm sorry. At a certain point, I don't know. I'll be careful. I want to really honestly respect, there's different platforms, there's different sensitivity around specific words, and that's actually really important. But at a certain point, like the pedantry just can't, because of the chaos produced by this app, which anybody could have seen. I was, as soon as I found out about this, I texted Mole. I said, "Are you worried about this?" And a lot of people, including, I won't go on record or whatever, but people that you absolutely respect and look to as credible people in this realm said, "Yeah, I am worried about that." Okay. They have an opportunity because of this chaos to play things out in a way that hurts Bernie Sanders. And I'm sorry. That's what they're doing. I don't know how much I can bend over backwards here. If you don't see this move for what it is, and I got news for you. Great. They're pulling all this shit. Bernie won. He just raised $25 million. These are absolutely pathetic people who are completely unequipped to beat Donald Trump, by the way. And they're discrediting themselves. Fight, fight, fight.
Yeah, until this this recanvass process is finished and it verifies what we know about Bernie winning, it's, I think, war with the Perez and the DNC. Like, this is absolutely unacceptable. And there's nobody should be giving anyone the benefit of the doubt right now. So, fine. Like, maybe this is all just incompetence. Fix it.
Yeah, fix it.
This isn't about the people that are saying fix it. This is about the people who need to fix it.
This is the people. And by the way, I'm seeing Melissa from Chicago. Tom Perez claims he will not stop the Iowa State Democratic Party from finishing reporting the results. Great. Not the point. What has he done by doing this? In fact, that's even, again, this is what's uncanny about these people, just even strategically. That's also the worst of both worlds. So he's stepping in. If he wanted to step in, he would have done it Tuesday night, okay? And he would have said, this is ridiculous. This is totally off. We're going to take over the process, and we're going to have a recanvass. Boom. That's it. Done. He waits until exactly the moment that it's going to come through as a win for Sanders. And then, okay, fine. Shut down the process. Be enormously sketchy. All right. But then he's saying the Iowa Democratic Party can release their numbers still, even as there's going to be a recanvass. All that means is another several days of conflicting reports, confusion, and
people in power making up the
illegitimacy.
rules.
People in power making up the rules. And again, I will say, Jim Messina tweeted out yesterday, an Obama strategist who works for right-wing parties like the Tories and everybody else abroad, who is his main clients are people like Uber and Airbnb. So obviously he's very fair to the Sanders agenda. He's also one of these people, fuming TV with Bernie can't win. He tweeted out essentially, maybe we should find this tweet. Yeah, it's a mess. We should just move on. This is a cultivated mess. And look. Sure, they got to F up the news cycle. They got to give Bernie Buttigieg an artificial boost, but the people should really recognize that Bernie won and there's huge momentum. And this is what the whole thing is going to look like. And this is another reason why you better win definitively. Yeah. This isn't some like, and then they'll move together and then everybody will come together as like a TV show. This is a battle.
And if they're going to recanvass and, Bernie's going to win again, he might be the first, candidate to win the Iowa caucus and the first primary in the country on the same day. So
that's exactly right.
That's a turbo boost for his campaign.
I mean, and, obviously we're kind of playing with house money with all this because the thing is Biden being fourth is just such a massive victory for Sanders.
It is. But I mean, look, it's a thing. I mean, Pete Buttigieg, and again, this is all on top of the fact, what's hysterical to me is, I'm sorry, can you tell me with a straight face that Pete Buttigieg is going to beat Donald Trump? I mean, that's the other thing that's amazing about this whole process is that it is an effort where clearly, and this is even just people going on TV and bad-mouthing Bernie, you are propping a candidate who nobody could possibly think is going to win. Nobody possibly thinks that a 37-year-old college town mayor who is totally for reasons that, first of all, let's just lay it out. For reasons that are absolutely wrong and need to be fought against and battled against, namely homophobia, like we saw in that horrifying clip at the caucuses, right? So that's the part that we have to march with Buttigieg and any candidate who's running in a general who is a gay man or a lesbian woman or a transgender person, 100%. But just like with Obama, that's a hurdle that's going to need to be overcome. Okay, so that's in the column of solidarity, we'll fight it. Then the other column is can't win statewide in Indiana, totally unappealing outside of a PMC framework. Go and talk to somebody and see if they find Pete Buttigieg trustworthy. Has a biography which exemplifies every single thing that Donald Trump ran against. McKinsey, outsourcing, price fixing, and then has the affect of some type of stunted 20-year-old in a dorm room trying to impersonate Barack Obama. I mean, honestly, that's the other part of this here. I don't pretend that Bernie is a slam dunk. And frankly, if I was just being a Machiavellian, as things are going now and Trump gets strengthened for re-election, I could totally see just you know what? I prefer Bernie. I'd prefer Trump beat Buttigieg. But you know what? I actually care about the fate of this country and this planet. And the only real off-ramp from apocalypse we have is Sanders. So I'm going to do everything I can. But it really just should be underlined in the context of all of this. You can point to things that might be difficult for Sanders and some hypotheticals that we haven't really dealt with yet. But Pete Buttigieg is like essentially John Kerry without a Vietnam record. I mean, how you could look yourself straight in the face and think that this candidate is going to win a Rust Belt coalition. You should not work in politics. That's like me, you know, I honestly, I can't even think of like a sports analogy because nobody could say anything that crazy in sports. Couldn't.
I hope Amy Klobuchar brings back her story about how he can't win a statewide race on Friday at the debate. Like, bring that back up.
Yo, it is
to a Tea Partier that lost to a centrist Democrat.
Awe-inspiring that I'll shut up in a second. If this is really the play, and you're going on a fantasy about the Midwest that is totally disconnected from material reality, and you have no problem nominating a candidate who has a overtly racist law and order record. So those are pretty big stipulations. It is insane that Amy Klobuchar will lose to Trump, I think, almost certainly. And Pete Buttigieg, I would bet every single material possession I have would lose to Donald Trump. So the fact that that mindset isn't even going to Klobuchar versus Buttigieg is mind-blowing. There is a universe I can conceive of Amy Klobuchar beating Trump. It's an infinitesimal one. There's none I could picture Buttigieg beating Trump in. It's unbelievable.
So for anybody that wants to beat Trump, the job right now in this moment is to make sure that this is Pete's Waterloo. We need to knock him out of here. And, you know, it's the scrutiny thing, right? Like, if he's going to declare this victory, then maybe it should be time that people start paying attention to really the depth of problems this guy has. And, you know, let's get him.
Let's look. Mayor of a town of 10,000 people whose main accomplishments were bulldozing poor people's homes, who has a racism-riddled police department. Now, obviously, racism in police departments is a national, local problem across the board. But so including certainly in, say, Amherst, Massachusetts, without a doubt. That being said, Amherst, Massachusetts does not have, in a town of actually larger, I think, than South Bend, does not have stories that sound like something out of LA or New York. Like that should really say something. You're running a coffee shop town. And these stories are not, again, the systemic racism that you would hear anywhere that needs to be fought root and branch. And obviously, we don't trust Pete to do it. But you're talking about people being murdered. You're talking about somebody, you know, are being killed in questionable circumstances to you know, whatever. At least one person, teenager. And you're talking about a mother who hasn't gotten the answers she wants. You're talking about a black police chief fired because apparently a bunch of fucking white people don't want to work for him under him. And Pete having their back, not his back. And the whole other set of questions about how does that relate to who donated to his campaigns? And that's his political record besides losing statewide runs. And then everything else he's done in life has been being in the most narrowly selected incestuous rooms imaginable. Harvard, Oxford, and McKinsey.
And just to button this, Sanders just spoke a minute ago, asked about the recanvass, and he said, we won an 8-person election by some 6,000 votes, and that's not going to change with recanvassing.
That's the message. That's the message. Bernie won Iowa. And you know what? They would not do this to any other candidate. Sorry. Full stop. Full stop. They would not. And I mean that like in a very specific sense, because they might, because the narrative would be if Pete Buttigieg was ahead by 6,000 votes and this satellite thing was still happening, it would be a handful of Twitter accounts, probably not even the Sanders campaign itself, going, we need to know what happened with the proportional delegates. And the whole media would go, well, there's still a little bit of a count going on, but the real story here is that Pete Buttigieg crushed it. And by the way, that would be the real story. Incidentally, that's where I got to be really blunt with you. I wouldn't be one of those people. I would say, Jesus Christ, that's a disaster, on to New Hampshire. Because we would actually be intellectually honest about that. So the bottom line is that Bernie Sanders won Iowa by 6,000 votes. And all of this from the media and the DNC is bullshit to obscure that. Period. That's it. All right. Let's take a few.
Believe your lying eyes, folks.
You're calling from a 952 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
This is Dawson from Minneapolis. How are you doing?
Hey, Dawson. What's going on? What's on your mind?
So I have kind of a tangential story about a candidate in South Minneapolis running as a Democratic Socialist against an establishment candidate who was endorsed by the Police Federation, otherwise known as the Cops for Trump people, if you're interested in hearing about that.
Sure.
Yeah, so the candidate's name is Omar Fateh. It's Omarfateh. He's running on a platform of $15 minimum wage statewide, which the incumbent does not support. Also supports rent control, single-payer health care, and free public transit. And I know that these are all things that your listeners are interested in. So if anybody lives in South Minneapolis or Minneapolis in general, or even Minnesota, I would encourage them to check out Omar Fateh, and they can even make a $50 contribution and get it refunded by the state.
Awesome. All right, Dawson, anything else?
Yeah. I guess one more thing I just wanted to bring up with the Sanders campaign is like the state delegate equivalent thing. It just occurs to me that, I mean, you just said it. I wanted to say it before, and you kind of just said it, which is that if the situation was reversed, all these percentages that they're giving are based on those state delegate equivalents. And I think when people see percentages, they interpret it as being like votes. And I just don't believe that if the situation were reversed, we wouldn't see all those media outlets reporting the actual raw vote totals. But it's like hard to find.
Definitely.
I'm looking and I can't find it.
I mean,
the actual raw vote totals.
I'm sorry, and I just want to quote. I don't know if we put this up on screen. I agree with you completely. Megan Day she's great. She's an indispensable read, and this is somebody who's not going, she's not falling for, fake videos or whatever, which again, people need to be extremely wary of those types of like, oh, look, I have a video of the ballots and Sanders getting screwed. Don't go down that road. But this is just an actual, I would be shocked to hear anybody have a different perspective than this at this point. This is just obvious. Megan Day tweeted this just a couple minutes ago. There's one satellite precinct left to report. Bernie will likely win it. Then DNC chooses this moment to press pause in the whole process and start over. If they had any other motive besides preventing Bernie from claiming victory, why not just report the last precinct first? I don't know. I don't know who's going to argue that. That is mind-blowingly obvious at this point. And frankly, frankly, the only people I can imagine actually denying this are like the same type of people who, thought that, Jonathan Chait's piece about, Donald Trump getting recruited by the Russians in like 1980s was plausible. So, let's be real about, thought process and skepticism here. Dawson, I'm sorry, a little distracted. Will you mention the name of that candidate one more time?
Yeah, it's Omar Fateh. That's Omarfateh, and we have a website. It's omarfateh.org, omarfateh.org.
All right, we got it in the blog. Thanks, Dawson. Have a good one.
All right, thanks so much, man. Have a good day.
Appreciate it. You too. You're calling from a 260 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hi, is it me?
Yes, it's you.
Hi, my name's Carissa. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio.
Hi, Carissa. What's on your mind?
Just a thought I've been having. A lot of the people I've been encountering online, there's so many people that just don't understand what it means to be a democratic socialist. Mm-hmm. And that's just really frustrating. So just something I've been thinking about, like how to reframe it to help people understand it better.
Yeah.
And kind of what Bernie is fighting for. Sorry, I'm very nervous. I didn't actually expect to get through.
No, it's okay. Please, just take your time. Go ahead.
So like a lot of the issues that people have, their immediate reaction is, oh, Bernie's gonna tax the crap out of us and stuff like that. So like the kind of way that I thought how to frame it is like, so you oppose higher taxes, right? Because it unfairly cuts into your hard-earned wages. You shouldn't have to use a small percentage of your income to support others. It's your money, right? Well, think about it this way. Billionaires are taxing you too.
Yeah.
The billionaires are taxing you at an even higher percentage than the government does. And instead of paying you a living wage, they are paying you less than your labor is worth. Billionaires are taxing you for the privilege of working at their company. But this time, the taxes don't go to benefit you and your community. They only go to benefit the millionaires and billionaires who decide how much your labor is worth. So there's no ethical way for someone to make $1 billion.
I like it. I think there's a lot of ways of I like that. And in my experience, to some extent, so it's a long haul, but I think that there is a lot of intuitive understanding. See, this is the double-edged sword of Republicans calling Obama a socialist. In the positive sense, it's really made the word a lot more, a lot less melodramatic, and they've worked against themselves
more
by
normalized.
Totally. On the other hand, I think the problem is, I think for people who have some really good political instincts and some sympathies on the left, they've kind of gotten to be like, wait a second, socialism is like some big, horrifying, convoluted, like high cholesterol broccoli. It's sort of like it's more taxes and more bureaucracy, but also not really protecting me from corporations as much as I want. And I do think that, this is where you say like, no, like what Bernie's actually talking about is, yes, there's the who's really taxing you and how you will save money for sure. But there's also like, hey, wouldn't you prefer to just have Obamacare expanded in such a way that everybody's just covered and you just walk into a hospital with no wasted time, no bullshit, and no extra forms? And I think people will resonate with that. I really appreciate the call.
Yeah, I mean, I saw you guys talk about it on the show last time about how, I don't know what day it was, but about how, like, that's something that Bernie needs to, like, jump on. Like, this is just an expansion of what we're already doing. Like, people have this idea that we're going to create some radically different system, which, I mean, in essence, that's kind of the hope, is that we're trying to get all of this, the lobbyists and the people being bought, like, try to get as much of that out as possible, because that's creating the biggest problems for democracy.
Right. I totally agree with you. I think you have really good instincts. Call in, let us know how it goes. Appreciate the call. Thank you.
This is like Jason Johnson not wanting to call Bloomberg an oligarch, or
Right.
then going on Twitter and saying, well, under certain definitions, both Bloomberg and Bernie Sanders are oligarchs. And the thing is like,
wow, that is championship level right there.
Exactly. Like Bernie's millions come from like people buying his books because they already approve of his political activities, versus Bloomberg using his fortune made from like Wall Street.
Can I just say that would be the equivalent of, to put it in terms that Jason Jones could understand.
Jason Johnson,
excuse me. If a PR firm that was hired to like, some like low rent firm to spin a Russian oligarch, let's keep it with Russia. Ooh boy, they're the baddies. And they and somebody was doing reporting on some like $60 billion oligarch who ran media properties and had executive power. And then there was a candidate or an activist trying to break into the system, or it was like, actually, this is what it really would be like. It was like, Václav Havel made money from plays. Like, that's like, so when you think about it,
but like,
it's like the same thing. I mean, Václav Havel got royalties from selling plays. Yeah. He's an oligarch.
Like, I'm more
same thing as running on the NORAD, the Nord Stream. Exactly, absolutely, very
like
smart.
When people want to throw like basketball players, I like, do you want to see Dame Lillard get that much money? And it's like, well, first of all, I want to tax wealth more and capital more than I want to tax wages paid to labor.
Right.
So once we get rid of the owners in the NBA and players actually own the team that they're working for,
then
along with all the all the
concession people and the staff. staff.
Yeah,
and the
then we can
management.
start thinking about like how we're going to tax these organizations and the workers. But there's still owners there, and that's the immediate problem.
I mean, when you think that's just incredible. That's like that's what I mean. That tweet, if he actually said that, I'm blocked. Like that really show. I mean, that again, like what's happening here is you're seeing stuff said from MSNBC land that is as delusional as stuff you hear on Fox. Like that is not just wrong. Like that is demented. I mean, like, honestly, like, okay, here's the tweet. Mike Bloomberg, Tyler Perry. All right, we're already off to stupid land. Tyler Perry, George Soros, Bob Johnson, Bernie Sanders, Bill Gates, Mitt Romney, Donald Trump, Papa John, Mark Cuban, Oprah, and Jay-Z. Yes, all these people and more can be legitimately described as oligarchs, but outside of a scholarly conversation, I wouldn't bother.
That's scholarly discussion. Thank you, Dr. Jason.
Let me just tell you something. I want to say, Dr. Johnson, just as you're able to project yourselves in the heads of people who work for a minimum wage, I'm going to project myself outward and say most people will not consider that a scholarly conversation. And I do think, okay, I don't know the net worth of everybody on this list, but I think it is, before you even get to like some of the meaningful distinctions that may exist between varying levels of political influence and what industries these people are in. Let's just take one thing, which is basically one person on this list is worth a couple $1 million. Everybody else on this list is worth like, I think at a bare minimum, like I think probably, Trump is probably almost certain. Trump claims to be a billionaire. I probably don't believe that. I think Jay-Z is worth at least 400 million. I mean, he's up there. Is Oprah a billionaire?
Oh yeah, I think
Oprah's
so.
a billionaire.
Yeah, definitely.
So, and Tyler Perry, Tyler Perry is probably worth
600 mil or something.
600. Like Tyler Perry is an extremely successful director and businessman. So, basically, he just what he did was he just put like. I mean, this doesn't even work either because Bernie is like in his late 70s and finally made money from writing a book. But if we wanted to be scholarly about,
a book about his political beliefs.
A book about his.
So he's being
beliefs.
rewarded for that. Like, right? Like that's the political influence. It's already there. That's why he's a millionaire.
He put the Chapo Trap House Patreon page on a list with George Soros and Mike Bloomberg. Like, I mean, honestly, I can't even, this is just so, this is what I mean. Like, this isn't even wrong. This is just like, this is not a person who's fit to think. This is not fit for purpose. This is insane. This is the type of thing that we would play someone say something like this on Fox and go, Jesus Christ, they're lunatics. Yeah. That's an insane comment. That's insane.
Samuel Finkelstein has added the net worths to this.
This is an insane comment.
I mean, that's a good academic discussion.
It's a great academic discussion. Wait, so read some of them off.
So Mike Bloomberg, $60 billion.
Right, Bloomberg's worth.
We were right about Tyler Perry off the top, though.
I think I saw it actually. George Soros, $8 billion. Bob Johnson, $1 billion. Bernie Sanders, $2 million. It makes $2 million look so tiny.
I know. It was like 2 million. Like, was like Bernie Sanders is like toiling in like a little like watch repair shop or something.
Bill Gates, $110 billion.
Oh, it's all the same.
Mitt Romney, $250 million.
All
Donald
the same.
Trump,
less than Papa
I don't
John.
believe.
Wow.
Trump, $2.5 billion. That's a lot.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Papa John, $500. Mark Cuban, 4.1. Oprah, 3.5.
Jay-Z hit $1 billion.
Hit $1 billion. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
So basically, like, and literally, you're okay. So basically. And you know what's, again, in addition to how delusional, embarrassing, and insane, and just demented, and I can't emphasize embarrassing enough, this is actually like the way this gets weaponized is that this is I'm going to make oligarch an irrelevant term in the same way that right-wing people make poor an irrelevant term, which is, well, they've all got refrigerators. You know, the richest people in ancient Rome didn't have phones. Ergo, poor people don't exist. I mean, I don't know. I can't, honestly, like how can you walk around in public and put like, And this is a tweet. So theoretically, you actually had a time to look at it and say, do I really want to write something this embarrassing?
He's really like approached levels of posting through it that we haven't seen in a long time. And before this, I think we had it on the show yesterday where he said, like, if I'm making like minimum wage, the difference between $1 billion and $1 million means nothing to me. And like maybe functionally that's true, but like that is a huge difference in inequality in this country.
Well, I think what he maybe should have said, I don't know the man's salary, but maybe if he said, hey, I'm making $500,000 a year to be a propagandist for mediocre Democrats, $1 million and $1 billion doesn't make a difference to me. Maybe he should have said that, because I would seem to me much closer to his area of expertise.
Somebody's made the multipliers of this. Bill Gates has 36,667 times the worth of Bernie Sanders. So Bernie's just got to write that many more books.
Yeah.
And he too can be an oligarch on level with Bill Gates.
I need to write, where do we go from here? At least 10 a day. And they all need to be bestsellers, or else my secret plan won't work.
Can we just collate a bunch of my old speeches and put those out?
Jesus Christ.
Just plagiarize them so we don't get these things shipped.
It worked for Biden, sort of.
If I just write 100 more books, I can reach the next person on this list.
I look at that list and I think we could catch up with Mitt Romney with a little bit of hard work.
I mean, I just appreciate Jason Johnson moving in so forcefully and taking over the poster for billionaires position. Like he has completely monopolized that.
No, that is amazing.
In a way that I'm sure they can all respect.
Yeah, and all because it's like I really appreciate it because Nina Turner had some very basic questions about me having $60 billion and how it affects our democracy. And Jason Johnson came up with this brilliant point, which is that when you really think about it, that's actually the only part that would offend somebody like Bloomberg. You're saying that my $60 billion is the same as this fucking old hippie's book? How dare you?
He's not.
I built an empire. He just wrote some shabby little book that a bunch of useless hippies wrote. Anyways, I don't have time for this anymore. The people of Ohio, no more e-cigs. It's honestly, it is one. Obviously, we have very different politics, but we are the notion. I think that especially people in our position wrote on that there is some level of sanity, competence, and coherence in the other side of this battle in the Democratic Party. I mean, I guess not. You're calling from a 906 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Holy shit, is this me?
Yes, this is you. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Michael, this is Chris from Michigan.
Hey, Chris, what's going on?
Hey, just love your show.
Thanks, man.
Kind of nervous.
No worries.
Listen, I've been thinking, because I watch a lot of the shows on YouTube, like Pac-Man. Pac-Man always talks about how we have to do this, like we as, being the left, Democrats and whatnot. And I just keep thinking that this kind of shenanigans with Bernie is going to go on all the way to the convention. And I can't help but, I don't know, kind of want to put a shout out to the organizers for when the convention happens to have something in place. I'm not suggesting violence or anything, but to kind of disrupt things and not let them move forward if there's more of this crap going on.
People power is important.
People power is incredibly important. I mean, there's a reason Ryan Grimm's book is called We've Got People. So I agree. And I mean, but again, before we even get there, the next step is double the turnout number. Hit every single door, make every single call, do absolutely everything that is humanly possible to get Bernie Sanders to win New Hampshire. That's the next step.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. That's not enough.
Well, okay, but again, I get frustrated with calls like this. I agree. I agree. But right now, the order of operations is New Hampshire.
Absolutely.
So if we don't take care of these next couple steps, here's another bias. Right? If Bernie Sanders loses the New Hampshire, okay, and frankly, and with media, we know that even if he wins by 5 points, they'll try to spin. Look at what they've done to Iowa. He won Iowa. Look at how that's been mucked up. Okay?
Yeah, and
So let me just finish this real quick. I hear you, but this is really urgent. When we talk about these convention scenarios, and this is honestly what I think. I think you go into the convention, and it might not be 50%. That's a very high bar. But the attitude from the beginning, another reason that all this unity nonsense was always so annoying and such an incredible waste of time, was that Bernie Sanders needs to go in with a decisive and commanding lead. And there still will need to be huge people pressure like you're talking about to make sure that there isn't any shenanigans. And the question needs to become to all the candidates, will you support the person with the delegate lead, forget the rules, the 50%, all that nonsense. Will you support the person with the delegate lead? But, yes, we're going to fight until the very end. But if you go into, I guess what I'm trying to say is Bernie is either going to win and go into the convention with a commanding lead, or he's going to get buried. And if he gets buried, it's going to happen really quickly. And if he gets buried, look, we're going to keep fighting. It can't ride on one thing because this is a question of literal survival. But this is by far the most important. I mean, obviously, this is the most important thing happening in global politics right now. And if we don't get if we get the next couple of caucuses and primaries right, then we go to the next phase of what we're going to do. But if we don't, because again, this is another establishment advantage. They're going to be saying that, Bloomberg or Buttigieg or whoever, they could lose 20 contests in a row and they will still be viable in the convention because of the institutional bias. But Bernie loses loses New Hampshire, that's a disaster. So focus on what's in front of us. Don't get too, out ahead. And it goes without saying, of course, there needs to be massive people presence at the Democratic convention, and people need to register themselves. 100%.
If it looks like you can make it there, make it there.
Yeah, absolutely. If there is even a fraction of a question, people need to be there. Appreciate the call, man. Thank you. All right, let's do some clips. All right, let's do a little bit of impeachment stuff. Bernie Sanders. Let's do it. It's hard to get my head into this impeachment stuff. Poll came out 2 days ago showing Donald Trump with extraordinarily high approval ratings. I've had the position that I think that this is a political wash, and primarily you do have to examine it how it looks politically because it's a political exercise because we knew he'd be acquitted. And yes, it is much more profitable. If David Brooks could tweet out yesterday that Democrats might have done better for themselves, they focused the last couple of years on infrastructure and early childhood education, that says something. However, the only thing that it really is coming out of this politically that I was wrong about that might be in the margins helpful is that it looks like Sinema and Manchin voted with the Democrats. And Mitt Romney, who is, please, my God, could you not use this as an opportunity to build up a private equity?
Hello, this is Mitt Romney.
Mitt Romney, clearly making a play for the history books and his brand, voted yes on one article of impeachment. And that does opens a line of attack, which is significant. That really robs them of what I thought their big talking point would be, which is that this is a partisan witch hunt. And look, obviously it's not going to make that much of a difference. They'll tear Romney apart, but it doesn't matter. When the score is read, one Republican voted to impeach Donald Trump, and that matters, and that does not help Donald Trump. Here's Mitt Romney explaining why.
Will judge us for how well and faithfully we fulfill our duty. The grave question the Constitution tasks senators to answer is whether the president committed an act so extreme and egregious that it rises to the level of a high crime and misdemeanor. Yes, he did. The president asked a foreign government to investigate his political rival. The president withheld vital military funds from that government to press it to do so. The president delayed funds for an American ally at war with Russian invaders. The president's purpose was personal and political.
All right, we get it. All right, so this is good. And of course, it should always be noted. This is just undeniably true. I mean, we're talking about even people who, even like, well, he learned his lesson. Pretty much everybody understands that this is an objective crime. except for maybe this guy, who, it should be remembered, was a House impeachment manager over an affair. This is Lindsey Graham freaking out.
I supported the Mueller investigation. I had Democratic colleagues come to me and say, we're afraid he's going to fire Mueller. Will you stand with us to make sure Mueller can complete his investigation? And I did. 2 years, $32 million, FBI agents, subpoenas, you name it. The verdict is in. What did we find? Nothing. I thought that would be it. But it's never enough when it comes to Trump.
Just a quick note. I think we made money on the Mueller investigation by basically seizing rugs from Paul Manafort.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Sorry.
That's funny.
It's never enough when it comes to President Trump. This sham process is the low point in the Senate for me. If you think you've done the country a good service by legitimizing this impeachment process, what you have done is unleash the partisan forces of hell.
Yeah, I think the partisan forces of hell were unleashed in, I don't know, when the Supreme Court gave George W. Bush the election, when Mitch McConnell wouldn't give Merrick Garland a hearing, when state Republican parties and judiciaries gutted the Voting Rights Act and allowed all sorts of local ordinances to pass to suppress the vote of people of color. Probably those would be the times. All right, so Butters was upset on the Senate floor, and here is our old friend. I mean, looking extremely comfortable there because of all of the rancid fish oil he's sucking down. Sebastian Gorka.
I want to use the time machine and go back in time and rewrite the president's speech to change that to, if you attack our citizens and abuse our trust, you forfeit your life and your power.
Or your power. We're not going to be killing Pierre Delecto because he's a swamp-dwelling rat, but I like
Correct. I don't want to murder anybody, but you forfeit your power, too.
I like how the guy said your life and your power.
Yeah,
how do you retain your power?
That was great. And then Gore, it was just like Mitt Romney's like, I've actually been dead for 10 years and still retain my Senate seat.
Because he's a swamp-dwelling rat, but I like
Correct. I don't want to murder anybody, but you forfeit your power, too.
No, and I think that's eventually what's going to happen. I meant it with all sincerity when I tweeted it out. Mitt Romney, Pierre Delecto is done. His career is done. And it's the ultimate act of cowardice that he wanted to rebel against the president, but he didn't have the testicular fortitude to vote guilty on both articles. Like a pansy, like a skirt-wearing little pajama boy millennial snowflake, he only voted guilty on one of them. Isn't that typical Romney, Aaron?
I identify as a Mormon. Please respect my safe space.
Sorry to play the Bill Maher card, but that's not what cowardice is.
No, that's not what By the way, I like how this fucking moron. I mean, Sebastian Gorka really is one of the most, can barely even do the impression anymore. He is, my favorite word now, embarrassing on every conceivable level. A guy who look up his, and I don't play these games. I don't care where you got your degrees, but I am interested
Look up the graphs.
Yeah, I am interested in what you wrote to get it. And I would look that up. And look, I will defend Mitt Romney here. Does this idiot think that Mitt Romney clearly had some ridiculous, I don't know why, I don't care why Mitt Romney voted for one and didn't the other, but do you really think that Mitt Romney was like, well, if I only vote for one, I won't get death threats from a bunch of random mouth-breathing morons that call into the Sebastian Gorka show? That's my calculation. If I vote for one, they won't threaten to kill me. Gorka's like, you fool. You thought if you only voted for one, that my mouth-breathing, incontinent fool listeners wouldn't want to take away your power. Look at how shrewd I am with the libel laws. Ooh, not your life. I like how that guy was great. That listener, Gorka Obi-Wan Kenobi'd him. He was just like,
no, they lose their power,
they should lose their life and their power, too. He's like, well, not their life, but their power. Yeah, exactly. Not their power, their life. Well, wait, excuse me. Not their life, their power. Yes, just like you said there, Dr. Gorka. Here's an example of Dr. Gorka's an image used, a diagram in his Terrorism and the Scale of Conflict, which is a part of his extremely rigorous PhD. I have to be completely honest. When I first saw this, because I'm not, I think I definitely have people explain charts to me and stuff. So I honestly saw this, and in a moment of immense insecurity was like, wait a second, am I missing? Like, because I don't want to be making fun of this guy all the time and then him write a diagram that I don't understand.
Like, ooh, Michael, Pelly, you're not familiar with academia.
Wow. I invite you to an intellectual joust. And then I believe it was Matt who actually just says, like, no, that's it. It's a bubble that says terrorism. There's an arrow pointed towards one question mark and an arrow pointed towards another question mark. And then there's a big arrow over it. And on one side, it says peacekeeping. And the other side, it goes thermonuclear war.
What I like about it is the arrow underneath peacekeeping, underneath the spectrum that we all can
we're all
recognize.
very familiar with the spectrum.
The spectrum between peacekeeping and thermonuclear war only goes towards the right. Like, apparently you can't. Once you start going down the line of when terrorism somehow, I guess, puts you on the line towards thermonuclear war, there's no going back.
Peacekeeping is over. And that happens a third into the bubble. Yeah, please give me a little bit more. Dude, this honestly does. There was a kid I remember from undergrad who would actually do, and he was much smarter than Gorka, but he would, and it didn't work. But I remember in class he tried to do cute stuff like this to try to like reduce the page count, and thought that if he did some like savvy looking graphic that said nothing, he could like kill a couple of graphs of writing.
I'm systematizing this. I'm definitely not trying to hit a page requirement.
Some people are visual learners, particularly millennial snowflakes.
This is definitely not something I could convey in words alone.
So how about I take
I need to represent these relationships visually. So we got the terrorist group Actor A, the attack in the blue circle, terror attack victim, the resultant fear and political pressure on society. You see obviously in the more bolded green circle of society to include the political elite, the general public, and international opinion.
So what I would like to know...
The upshot is obvious.
The upshot is obvious. Professor, my advisor, who I don't meet in person but speak to via electronic correspondence every 6 months, I have a request. Can I stop plagiarizing transcripts of the Mark Levin show and do a couple of graphs instead?
I feel like a terrorism expert now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm going to
go use this to harass some Muslim kids in New Jersey.
Yeah, exactly. I think we're equipped to go terrify some seniors at Fort Lauderdale. And that is why I suggest, Officer Lunkhead, that you spy on Bangladeshi families. This is how counterterrorism works, by the way.
In this circle, you're a 13-year-old Arab. In that circle, there's your mosque.
Yeah.
In this circle, it means you're a terrorist.
Yeah. And see, and then in this other little bubble, there's a little picture of me smiling in front of a Mustang. So I actually get paid for this shit.
In the little circle that you see my license plate, that literally says, this is not a joke in character. It actually says Sun Tzu.
This is real life.
Art of War.
This is real life. This is actually happening.
Anyway, please don't say we're going to kill Mitt Romney on the show.
Yeah. Anyways, point being, could you just say that Mitt Romney will lose his power? Special announcement to listeners. It would be super helpful if you didn't threaten to kill public officials when you call into this program.
Listen, I've already been thrown off YouTube because of the whole Imagine Dragons fiasco. Don't get me thrown off Facebook Live as well.
My wife has really been cracking the whip about my trust fund, and I would really appreciate if I could get a small amount of fish oil ad revenue. So that being said, please don't threaten to kill Mitt Romney. Thank you. Oh, okay, Mr. Gorka, sir. Anyways, he should lose his life. Wait, no, his power. Got you.
Ever since I've been thrown off YouTube, my wife has been working overtime translating research documents for David Irving.
You think my wife translates Nazi documents for fun? It's work like anything else. If it was up to us, we would be retired in the Florida Keys.
She's still in the Trump administration, isn't she?
I believe so. I believe she was part of the same group that cut funding off for groups that help exit people from white supremacist groups.
Huh.
Interesting. Interesting how that all works. All right. You're calling from a 503 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Elliot calling from Chicago.
Hey, Elliot. What's on your mind?
Yeah, so I wanted to comment on that video of that Pete Buttigieg supporter who was a little bit bigoted, but
a lot of
first I want to I wanted to comment on that the whole Bernie bro narrative. I've got this premise which we've all white people in America, our entire culture has inherited this catalog of implicit associations, this rhetorical toolkit of white supremacy, a culture of white supremacy. We've inherited it. It's the default that we're born with, and we all have to unlearn it. And if you put a bunch of us in a room in a strategy session together, who are to some extent white supremacists in our culture and heritage, it's easy to see how we might automatically produce the Bernie bro branding strategy, right? We're portraying our opponents, the Bernie bros, as rhetorically, if not physically violent. Then we're portraying them as misogynists, which serves to kind of intimate or suggest that they might be sexually violent. And maybe this portrayal is somewhat racialized by calling them bros. I don't know, but
I hear what you're saying. There might be something to it. I just think I think ironically some of the stuff that this is more from this sort of total misuse of actually some more of where you're coming from is where a lot of that rhetoric comes from. But I have to say, my bottom line, Elliot, is like, first of all, it's embarrassing and silly and easily dismissible. And part of it is also just cultural, like you're running a campaign and, there's going to be different people with different beliefs, different physical styles, different temperaments, different cultural attitudes. That's reality. That's how things work. And also, to the extent bros exist who support Bernie, thanks, bro. Thanks for trying to get me healthcare. Appreciate it. You know what I'm saying? Thanks for the call, man. I'm just, it's like, even to the extent it exists, like, great, awesome, thank you.
Yeah, I
thanks for using your bro energy to try to make the world good.
I spend more time just showing what happened in the satellite caucuses.
Right. Guys, with you on Gorka, but it's not his wife who translated Irving, it was his mother. Oh. His wife is also horrible for an entirely different set of reasons.
My apologies to the Gorka women.
Apologies to the House Gorka. We apologize. You're calling from an 847 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, it's Josh from Chicago.
Josh, how you doing? What's on your mind?
Good. I'm good now that Bernie has won Iowa.
Indeed.
And I'm headed to New Hampshire this weekend.
Sweet. Well done. Thank you, Josh.
Oh, yeah. No. I actually wanted to, I know you guys spent some time on the James Carville clip yesterday, but since you guys did talk a little bit about the sort of Barry Goldwater Democrats, and I did want to comment on this and relate that clip back to some of what you guys were talking about today, because there was one thing I was very disturbed about in the Carville clip was instead of attacking Bernie on the sort of economic policies, which I think is what a lot of people, especially when you see them on MSNBC, they tend to do, the first thing he went to was racial politics, like just straight up like dog whistle racism. And
what are you talking about? What did he say?
With the Carville, well, when he talked about allowing felons to vote and open borders.
Again, I got to just be really clear. I'm not trying to quibble here, but I want people to be really realistic about this. Those aren't dog whistles. Those are both very overt
Okay, fine. Over.
And also, they are something that if you poll, like, we need to start getting really clear about these things. There is no single voting demographic in the United States that supports open borders. Anyone, period, full stop. And I haven't seen
Bernie
the polling. What?
And Bernie Sanders does not.
And Bernie Sanders does not. Right. And there's also, I would imagine that if you looked at the polling for felons voting, I mean, people should know that when Bernie Sanders said that, like, Cory Booker went after him for it, right? Like, there is an unending appetite to demonize prisoners. So I don't want to interrupt your flow, but I guess my point is I want to be really clear, because what Carville is pointing to is how Bernie will be run against, and it will be potent for certain people. And there needs to be a preparation to deal with it that not on policy, but I do think some of the demands on Bernie to constantly signify are not going to be helpful for him to actually win. And Carville, it's amazing. He's 75 years old and he's totally out of it, but I think he's got a much closer grip on that socially center-right, economically populist, like, actual swing in the Rust Belt. Like, that's actually real. We're so used to talking about people that talk about electorates that barely exist, but that one's real. Anyways, go ahead.
It is real, and I think that I guess the point I was making is that if you press Carville on Bernie's economic policies, I don't know if he would say he would necessarily 100% agree, but I think he would say, Bernie's saying something interesting, or I think he has a point there. And I think, one, obviously, I think it's incumbent on all of us to be calling out Carville for just, overt racism. But I do think that what Carville seems to miss is that these are the kind of voters that Bernie can actually win through his economic policies, as well as also getting out, obviously, like communities that don't necessarily vote all the time. I mean, the polling with Trump and the Latinx population is pretty worrying, and Democrats have had trouble reaching the Latinx community for like a decade now. I mean,
well, I think here's what I would say though, right, is I actually think this is specifically what I mean. I mean, and look, the reason most Hispanic voters obviously vote for Democrats, but Trump did increase the margins, and any small margin is what matters. And I think that goes to the issue that I always try to hammer home, which is that you can't speak about any group as a monolith, and there's vast differences inside it. And Trump definitely has a strategy for how to program against the fact that he is massively racist and is kidnapping children. But the thing I want to say is, like, even with, you're right about reaching out to those demographics, but I would not start by calling Carville overtly racist. You see what I mean? Because if he's saying something that resonates with people, including many people who would never conceive of themselves as racist for saying it, that is not the approach to take to not get them to vote around those issues. And I can tell you, I think even in Carville's case, and Carville's definitely somebody, he worked on the Clinton 92 campaign. He's definitely somebody who knows how to dog whistle and has signed off on racialized politics. I would bet 1,000,000 to 1 that in that instance, he did not think he was doing racial appeals or dog whistling. He thought he was just saying common sense things. Now, we all know, yes, a lot of what is quote unquote common sense is obviously filtered through all these other things, but that's not a fight that I want to figure out in a general election. So the thing that you need to say to people that are persuadable is, on the one hand, no, of course we don't support open borders. That's a lie. What we do support is humanity, decency, demilitarization. And by the way, the plan that Bernie has of ensuring a wage for everybody is going to be good for you, because it's the company bosses that are ripping everybody off. But you cannot start by affirming something like, in the context of those talking points, yes, we want to sit back and have an academic conversation. Of course, there's a whole line to it, right? That there's some truth to that. But Carville does not think he's doing that. And certainly nobody that is in the realm of being in play to vote for Sanders who expresses concerns on those issues is going to be identifying as a racist because of it. And I think that, again, just tactically, can't keep chipping off that rhetoric. for so many different things. It's alienating, and it's not going to work. And I'm being less, I'm being more blunt about my opinion of how to present these things because I'm getting fucking terrified about what's going to happen in this election. So I'm doing less appeasing and less hand-holding of different, sentiments because this actually needs to happen. And partially it actually needs to happen because we do have the most overtly white supremacist administration in history. And what will happen to migrant and refugee populations will be beyond obscenity. It already is and will only increase. So no, that isn't the way I would attack it. And that's not the way I'd reframe my critique of Carville's comments at all. I would go in a very different direction. But I do agree with you about turning people out, and the types of people he's talking about can definitely be persuaded. So Josh, when are you going to New Hampshire?
I'm going Saturday. I'm actually staying through primary day.
Awesome. Well, we really need you,
So,
man.
we need to. Look, I think he's going to win New Hampshire, but there's a real chance he could be the only person who is viable because there's so many second place candidates essentially.
Yep.
And that would be great because it sends the momentum that is carried through Nevada and then to South Carolina is huge because of that. And
yep.
I also think it's actually great that this Iowa thing is a toss-up just because New Hampshire tends to sort of spit in Iowa's face in terms of the results. It's actually good that, if anything, Buttigieg has, I don't even want to say a surge, but there's people who now want to rebuke the result of Buttigieg winning Iowa.
Let's do it. Let's make it happen. Josh, thanks for the call, man. Appreciate it. All right. Final call of the day. You're calling from a 760 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Michael. It's Pastor from Humboldt.
Hi. How's it going, Pastor? What's on your mind?
Pretty good. Semester's going. So the last time I called, we talked about using the word triggered, and I wanted to talk to you about it again because after the call ended, I had a lot of people commenting me and asking me to call again to talk to you about it.
Okay.
And so one thing that seemed to be a misunderstanding was that triggered is actually a medical term that's used in therapy. And, sorry, I'm nervous. I have anxiety.
It's okay.
So when people are using it in this colloquial way and, talking about people who aren't actually medically triggered,
right,
it really diminishes the meaning of the word.
Right.
So it's already hard enough for people to respect you when you do have a trigger. And it covers things with PTSD, anxiety, depression, addiction, and phobias. So and particularly this happened to me in high school before trigger even started being really used.
Mm-hmm.
I have tryptophobia, which is the quote unquote fear of holes, which is really stupid. I know, I hate it, but I feel physically ill when I see certain.
Yeah, please, and don't. Plenty of people. People. I don't know how to do this. There's people very close to me who have something in the realm of what you're talking about. So please, no shame, embarrassment. I will say, please just kind of land this relatively soon because we're a little tight. But please, no shame and embarrassment about that. Please.
All right, I'll try to go quick. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
But in high school, I told people about this, and what they did was they showed me those images, and it made me feel physically ill. And this happens all the time, and people don't understand how triggers are physically debilitating.
Mm-hmm.
And when you use trigger in such a way and diminishes it, it creates less respect for people who really are just trying to heal. So I think it's really important for you guys to stop using it in a way where it's not discussing people with mental health issues. And particularly if you guys could really start talking about mental health issues more, it's really an epidemic. And, suicide is up, especially, and mental health issues have a lot to do with poverty.
Definitely.
And just if you are depressed and you aren't able to go to work and you don't have any social, welfare, it's really debilitating and people kill themselves.
So let me say this. I can't, I can't make a specific commitment, but I really hear you. I really appreciate the call. And also, I feel so, speaking for myself, the issues and some of the things you're talking about are certainly not alien to me. That's how I'll put it. So I hear you, and I really, really appreciate the call. And thanks for calling back, and thanks for following up. And take good care, okay?
No problem. I love you guys because I know that you guys, if someone truly calls you out for something, that you will take it into consideration. And that's why I've been trying to call. And I really appreciate your guys' show. You guys made me a leftist and a socialist. I'm trying to get my BA in sociology and trying to make the world better. And I really want to thank you guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Be well, okay? Take care.
This sort of the way a term can have a certain meaning.
Sorry, I'm really sorry, guys. I totally forgot and effed up the post roll. Can we pin that on? Okay, all right. Sorry, go ahead.
But this the sort of way a word that's used in a sort of like professional context becomes sort of popularized, and then the meaning gets diluted.
Right.
Reminds me of what's her name? Barbara. I'm blanking on her name now. The woman who, Barbara Smith, who coined the term identity politics, endorses Bernie once again this time. And she said, it's fairly obvious why, if you knew what I stand for, why I would endorse Bernie. Right.
And she actually specifically said, I think in the root, she's just said, her definition. And again, everything is critiquable and questionable, right? Like, and I think there is a broader conversation that needs to be had, but her really basic point, she said he has a deeper understanding of what the situation is and why we have injustice, inequality, and discrimination, whatever words you want to use to describe society, that isn't functioning the way it should be functioning, said Smith. He has the most incisive, sharp understanding of where it all comes from. She said at another point, I'm really scared to paraphrase, but really just something to the effect of like, if this is the piece in the root, all right, well, we'll another time, but yeah, look, she very sharply called out the misuse of her terminology, to talk about, basically the difference between recognizing that every person comes to a meeting or a group or a political struggle from radically different experiences, is different from saying there can't be any bridge into common struggle, essentially. Which is certainly not, obviously. Let's see. Yeah, when we used the term identity politics, we were actually asserting that black women had a right to determine our own political agenda. We as black women, we actually had a right to create political priorities and agendas and actions and solutions based on our experience of having these simultaneous identities. And that included, she goes on, working, gay, lesbian, bisexual. That's what we meant by it. We didn't mean we don't care about other people's situations and injustices. And we absolutely did not mean that we would not, that we would only work with people identical to ourselves. We did not mean that we did not mean that we strongly believed in coalition, working with people. We did not mean that. We strongly believed in coalitions and working with people across various identities and common problems. And I think that the Sanders campaign and the candidate himself are absolutely consistent with what we meant by identity politics. So, there you go. It is one of those like McLuhan movie moments. Like, yes, this is one of the core intellectual architects of where all of this comes from. And because she's committed and has actual politics and a coherent worldview, this isn't right. Like, there you go. And of course, this is still going to be bastardized and cynically deployed by a gazillion people. But for what it's worth, if you want the actual thinking process here it is.
All the other conversations are frankly superfluous and distractions.
Precisely. Absolutely. All right. Let's read a few IMs and then we got to go. I will try to take one more phone call. Let me see if I could take one more phone call. Sorry, we will not get to all calls. Apologies. You're calling from a 954 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Michael?
Yes.
Hey, it's Mark from Miami.
Hey, Mark. What's going on? What's on your mind? Final call today.
Good. Big fan of the show. Been listening to Sam for a long time.
Cool.
Listen,
thanks,
real quick, I know you guys are passionate about the Bernie stuff, and I consider you friends of the show. I don't agree with a lot of the stuff that you guys talk about, but it's okay. It's what friends do. They listen to each other's points of view, and they politely disagree. I do think, and I made the suggestion to Sam before, I would like to see if you could try to take the show on the road. Is there any plan to do that? Because, and I know we're tight for time, any chance of taking the show and going to Wisconsin and doing a couple days there and just kind of taking the temperature and the pulse of the people that are essentially going to decide the election?
Well, I mean, look, we do a lot of TMBS shows on the road. That's what I could tell you. I don't know.
I mean, it's easier to travel because it's weekly, but
yeah,
easier to travel when you don't have kids.
Easier to travel when you don't have kids. Easier to travel when it's
really
weekly.
Cool.
When you're cool.
No, I think it's more likely when you're kind of lame.
Right.
But yeah, man. I mean, look,
think it's a better idea.
Yeah, but also I want to just say to you too, just to not to look. I think it is really important, to the extent it's possible, to get out and talk to as many different people as possible. But I also think that, frankly, like, it's a totally self-selected show anyways. Like, I wouldn't go, we're going to go to Austin in a couple of months. Am I going to go and be like, I get what's going on in Texas? I mean, I'll get part of what's going on in Texas, and it's going to be awesome to meet people. But we got to mediate these things through, like, always Malaika Jabali, which we've talked about so many times on my show, and her reporting on Wisconsin and a new movie about it, and poll numbers, and Harvey K, who lives there and is a historian. I mean, that's how we, Malaika Jabali was her name. I mean, that's how we need to mediate it as best as possible. Because if we go to, Madison for a day, that's awesome, and we'd love to do it. But, I don't know if that's exactly getting the pulse of a state.
I don't think. Okay, I've lived there and I've worked there, and I did what those guys did for years. And I can tell you, as much as I admire the idea of trying to move this over to the window and getting the discussions where it needs to be, a lot of what Bernie said obviously has come to fruition in terms of his ability to raise the minimum wage, which is absurdly low. The idea of trying to create some kind of difference in the income gap.
I'm sorry, just not to cut you off, but I want to be really time efficient. At this point,
I'm sorry.
At this point in the prime, no, I have a question for you. I get you have concerns about Bernie. Is there any other person running that you could, with a straight face, tell me? Granted, there might be some problems with Bernie. I'm not someone who just always says he's automatically a slam dunk. I think he will win, but I've never been somebody who says that. There's problems with anybody. Do you, with a straight face, thinking about Wisconsin specifically, think that Mike Bloomberg, Pete Buttigieg, or Elizabeth Warren, or Amy Klobuchar is better positioned, especially when you look at the numbers of what happened in 2016 and look at the primary results, but also the general election results? You actually think that any of those other candidates are better positioned than Bernie Sanders to win that state?
Yes, but let me just say this to you.
I want to know on what basis. What basis?
We don't have the time.
What basis?
Because politics is perception. You guys don't get that. Politics is perception.
All right.
What's your perception?
But I get it. It's all we've all got perception, but I'm talking like actual data, actual reality.
I just want
actual data, actual reality. Who would that candidate be?
I know what the data says, but
who would that candidate be?
2016.
Who would that candidate be? Who would that candidate be?
I think right now, you're not going to like the answer. So
dude, just go. We got limited time.
Either Elizabeth Warren or Joe Biden is better positioned to take those Midwestern states. Look, I'm not a Pete Buttigieg fan. I think he's
Joe Biden. All right. So let's wait. So let's go over this real quick. So Joe Biden just got historically humiliated in Iowa, and by the way, I just want to say, I have always from the beginning said that it is either Sanders or Biden, and I do think Biden, pre-senile Biden, yes, I think there's some truth to that, though his record has a ton of things you could run against. Now, Elizabeth Warren is unpopular in Massachusetts, that I can tell you from being in the polls, and I don't mean among liberals. No, let me finish, dude, I can't talk with you if you don't let me finish my thought. She's unpopular in the parts of the state that are analogous to where you need to draw voters. She polls poorly against Trump, and she's got numerous things, including the Native American heritage thing, which Trump can dine on for ages. Bernie Sanders, look, dude, you know what? Honestly, look. Okay, then it becomes the Chris Matthews principle. If you feel a certain way, respect. I feel a different way. But I'm trying to, at some point, talk about actual things. If you had a data point or a reality point, I could go with it, but you don't. And so I respect you. I like you. I appreciate the call, but I guess all I could tell you is we just feel differently. Thanks, man.
You're dead.
All right, folks, we got to run.
You can
honestly,
deal with your own anxieties, maybe.
I mean, that's the thing. I am truly all ears for actual data points of concern about Bernie. But that's not a data point. That's Chris Matthews.
This conversation was a bit more relevant 3 years ago in 2017 when we were leading up to 2018. I feel like we have the points now where we can, maybe move on.
I mean, it's also
we have votes in. I mean,
Yeah.
We look at just go to 538 and look what happened in any state that's going to be competitive. Like, it's not Warren surging to the top. It's not. Look what happened to Biden's numbers. They're cratering. He's not viable. Well,
it's not. No, and I thought.
I wish a lot of these people were more viable, but frankly, it looks like we might not have that luxury.
Yeah, I think that's terrifying. And I mean, honestly, like Elizabeth Warren, I'm sorry, she's unpopular, relatively speaking, in Massachusetts. And if you break down the state map, she is popular in places that we're going to win, and unpopular in any place that is analogous to what you would need to do to swing. And if you just think, and again, it's like, look, Warren did fine in Iowa, but she ain't win. She was in third place. Like, I don't know what to tell you.
And the data came in that she's siphoning voters from Bernie and not necessarily, she's not even getting that many from Hillary. So all she's doing is weakening Bernie. All that happened in Iowa from Warren being there is her smearing him as unsupportive of women right before it.
Right.
And then her voters, which she siphoned, this is just the data, which she siphoned from Bernie 2016 went, they went for Bernie after they went for Pete, really. Like 36% went Pete, 33% went Bernie. So she's making the Bernie 2016 voters she siphoned from him worse. So like, I need to see a value proposition for this campaign.
No, I need to see a value proposition too. And if you want to just talk on the level of like feelings and impressions, I could tell you that every single person that I've interacted with in my life and encountered, including in ways, again, that aren't good, frankly, they will never, and I'm including both my projection like you are, as well as anecdotal conversation, people that I know who did vote for Obama and like Bernie will never vote for Elizabeth Warren or Pete Buttigieg, ever. So if we're playing in that impressionistic game, I can do that too. The data suggests otherwise. So let's just stop wasting time. When will Michael have Ben Mankiewicz back on to talk about working with Dennis Miller? Well, I love Ben Mankiewicz. I guess I'll have him on. I don't know about that Dennis Miller thing. Sounds funny. All right. Let's see. Let me do the final IM of the day. This is kind of funny. Let me do this as the final. Wait, sorry. That won't be the IM. Sorry. Two more IMs. Sorry. Watching The Irishman, I think the disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa was less to do with corruption or malice and more to just do with well-meaning and confidence.
Same with the Kennedy assassination.
Yeah, absolutely. Final IM of the day, A Square. Mike, Connor and you hit some arguments I've heard from higher info voters about Mayo Pete. He's a McKinsey Wall Street candidate, so many already know that he's not really even in his project. Trying to get to the Lula interview, but listen to Petra Costa 1 on TMBS. Excellent. Well, thank you so much. Folks, everybody's back tomorrow. We're, of course, at the Bell House. Appreciate all of you. Peace and love. Go make this happen.
It might take all the strength
Okay.
to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught.
Hunt a Killer, the activity that allows you to work as a team and investigate crime in the comfort of your home. It's a badass murder investigation where you decode ciphers, examine clues, and solve puzzles. Go to huntakiller.com/majority. Use promo code majority at checkout for 20% off your first box. That's huntakiller.com/majority with promo code